Power chords are one of the most popular ideas on guitar, and they are used by guitarists in almost every style of music. However, most guitar players are not familiar with a lot of the details surrounding the power chord, things like optional shapes for power chord fingerings on the neck, or ways that maybe the interval of the power chord could be used in licks and riffs, stuff like that. Also, even the theory behind it. What is a power chord? A lot of people will say, oh, it's a perfect fifth interval. Well, what exactly is a perfect fifth interval? Why is it called perfect? Things like that. So, in this lesson, we're going to run through a number of these ideas and make you better equipped with the use of the power chord on guitar. It's such an important interval and an important idea. So let's get started on this episode of the Guitar Blog Insider, covering the things you need to know about power chords. Well, first of all, let's start by quickly discussing what a power chord actually is. The term power chord refers to the use of a perfect fifth interval. And a perfect fifth interval is part of a group of other perfect intervals that are all very balanced in their sound. In fact, when a perfect interval gets struck, they project a very uniform impression of tone, almost as if there were only a single tone existing rather than two separate notes, of course, being played together. In essence, an interval is the distance in pitch between one note to another note. So, for example, if you had a perfect group of intervals starting at just unisons, let's say, and for that, maybe what I'll do is I'll take a G tone over here at the 10th fret of the second string, and I'll play it against a G located at the 12th fret of the third string. Now those are the exact same note. They sound very clear. They resonate very, easily between one another. It almost doesn't even sound like there's two separate tones there. It sounds like the same tone. Now let's do something different. Let's move on from there and do an octave. So I'll take a G from the 5th fret of the 4th string, and I'll play it against a G up here at the 8th fret of the 2nd string. So 8 tones higher in the scale, right? G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Sounds very clear, very balanced. Let's do another one. Let's do a perfect fourth. Now that's going to be 4 tones out from the G scale. G, A, B, C. So a C tone. And then finally, let's do a power chord. Let's do the fifth interval, perfect fifth. Very balanced. Now, to give you an idea of what I mean when I'm saying that how balanced these perfect intervals are, let me play a major third. It's a G to a B. You can really tell that there's a fluttering sound between those two notes. You can really tell it's two notes played together. Let's move that down to a minor third, so we'll go G to B flat now. It gets even more extreme. You can really hear the two notes fluttering against one another. There's like a warbling sound between the two notes. Let me really pull this out extreme. Let me do an augmented fifth. It's a really severe sound there. That's so unstable compared to the stability we have with a perfect fifth. That is so stable compared to this. Or this. So as you can tell, when you do these different intervals, the perfect class of interval is far more balanced sounding compared to the other classes of the major and minor, maybe augmented, diminished intervals. And this can make for big differences in sound when you're using perfect intervals applied musically. All right, next I want to explore power chord layouts on the neck, get you acquainted with some of the shapes that we have for the power chord across the guitar fingerboard. And the power chord, as we were discussing, it's a simple interval since it only involves taking a starter tone, what we'll call our root, and then traveling away from that root 5 scale steps in the major scale. That would give us from A to B, C sharp, and then D, and then E being our fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that, away from that A tone. So it's very simple to set up. If you look at it in terms of, how it's built within the scale, it's got 2 whole steps, a half step, and another whole step. Or you could just jump 7 half steps from the one note to the fifth. So, here's our note we're on, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 takes us up to that perfect fifth. So, there's a couple of different ways to look at it, but basically, once you understand it off of, one note, start moving it around and looking what happens when it moves to some of the other tones. Like, for instance, if I went to a B flat, off the B flat, if I went through the scale tones there, I got B flat, C, D open, E flat, and then there's the F up top there. So B flat to F is the power chord shape. You're just counting through fifths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's really that simple, but what I want to zero in on here is some of the shapes, the common shapes that you need to get to know. So let's start, by going back to the A on the 6th string, 5th fret, and we're going to build the most common power chord shape out there. Is the A to the E, 5th fret in this case, over to the 7th fret, 2 adjacent strings, and it's just a whole step apart between those 2 strings. And this shape is, you can move it to the 5th string, you can move it to the 4th string. It's always the same, basically the same layout. Now, where it changes a little bit is if we go and extend the power chord, if we take it up to another octave, and that's very common too. So we'll have the A, the E, and another A in that case. And this is just like an extended power chord with the root 5th and octave added. And you can see I'm using my small finger to grab that upper tone on the octave. Now this is another shape though that works perfectly fine to move it over to the 5th string root. Really easy to move around on those 2 strings. But if you move it to the 4th guitar string, we're going to have a little bit different shape setting itself up here. Let's go to an A off the 4th guitar string, 7th fret. Now up the 5th is going to give us a 9th fret E, and then going to the next octave is going to give us a 10th fret A octave up there on the 2nd string. So a little bit different shape layout, and it's a little bit harder to jump around the neck with. It'll take a little bit more practice. You're really going to have to learn to lock your hand up into that shape. So it takes a little bit of practice, but once your hand gets used to moving laterally along the neck like that, it's going to be fairly decent, for you to get your head wrapped around and, understand where everything's moving to. But most of it's going to be physical. You have to, get the technique together. There's one other shape I want to cover with you, though. It's kind of an interesting one. I'm going to go to the A at the 12th fret of 5th string here for this one. And I'm going to be using the upper 2 tones of that 4th string shape that we were just messing with. So we're going to use those on the 9th and 10th frets, the 2nd and 3rd strings, and use this low A here down off of the 12th fret of the 5th string. Now what I think is really cool about this shape is you can use some hybrid picking to do your plucking with your pick and the middle and ring fingers of your plucking strumming hand. And then you come up with this really kind of an interesting punchy sound out of that chord. And it's kind of unique because you have a little bit lower, fatter tone off that root that you're going to have from the 5th string there. So kind of an interesting one, but those shapes are the most common ones you see most popularly used out there and in all styles of music. I mean, you can find this stuff in pretty much every style of music you could dream of. So anyway, get rolling along on those, move them around the neck a little bit, learn to lock your hand up into that shape. It's going to be super beneficial to know these patterns. Well, aside from the power chord shape on the neck itself, which is obviously really important, another really interesting area where the 5th interval can come alive in our playing is with the 5th interval being used within both licks and riffs. And the sound created with this perfect 5th interval approach is pretty cool, so it's definitely worth, spending some time and understanding on your fingerboard, mostly because of the strength or the impact that that 5th interval has. It's such a good balanced type of tone to use in a really repeated way that it can really impact the listener. So for example, I want to show you a couple ideas on the neck here with the 5th interval. The first one is a sliding lick that I got for you. It travels along the upper 2 guitar strings and it's going to move from a 5th position idea all the way up into around 10th there. And it goes like this. I'll play it slowly at first. Here it is a little faster. Again. So as you can tell, it moves along the neck in a really interesting way. It has a really cool, form to it. It's a slide where we move into the power chord. Just the way it moves along the neck, it's a really interesting sound. And it comes together by just moving in a half step through the scale, then a whole step, and then another whole step, and then another half step. And just in the way I laid it out, I mean, you could keep it going, you could go backwards. I mean, there's a lot of options with it, but you can tell it's kind of an interesting sound. You could even learn this and then take it to other string sets and try it in, other string sets as well. But let me just go and take a look at one other idea here with this. Is also kind of along the same lines, but we're going to flip things around a little bit. And what we're going to do here is we're going to flip the 5th interval so it's kind of similar lick, but still applies the strength of our perfect 5th power chord. And what we're going to do is we're going to move along the bottom string with the slide, and then we're going to tag into the 5th. See, there's an A to E, regular power chord interval, but I'm doing it between the 4th to the 2nd strings. You can tell, again, a really neat sound, You know, it's just super interesting sounding. And as a lick, you know, moving along the neck laterally like that, it's pretty right on. So you can tell it's quite cool to put these together in licks and riffs, and once you start mapping them out all over the fingerboard, you're going to come up with some very cool sounding ideas. You know, the application of the power chord concepts and the power chord's foundational interval, the perfect fifth, are simply abundant in music, and the application of this popular sound on guitar is by no means limited to its typical use in where you think of a power chord maybe in rock or some heavy metal tune or whatever. The power chord shape on the neck and the use of the perfect fifth can go a long way in many different music styles. So learn how to view the power chord patterns that we've introduced here and spend time practicing how to use them and take them into all the different directions that we've discussed throughout this video. The power chord and the use of the perfect fifth interval are great sounds with all kinds of stylistic applications. So even if you only learn a couple of power chord ideas, I'm sure you'll enjoy adding them into your next riffs or your next guitar solo. Well, I'd like to end the discussion by saying thanks for joining me. If you want to learn more about what I do as an online guitar teacher, then head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for your free lifetime membership. When you want more, you can always upgrade to either a basic or premium lesson package and start studying the guitar courses that I've organized for the members of my website. Also, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on all this stuff on the power chord in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. I want to say thanks again, and we'll catch up next week for another episode of the Guitar Blog Insider. When it comes to online guitar lessons, there's no place better than creativeguitarstudio.com. General membership to the site is always free, and paid memberships to access our step-by-step beginner, intermediate, and advanced guitar programs are offered in reasonable monthly and annual packages. Skype lessons are also available if you need more specific instruction one-on-one to discuss the finer details of your guitar playing. Sign up today at creativeguitarstudio.com. I've got 25 years experience teaching guitar and have written a well-organized step-by-step guitar course. Head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for a free membership today. Join the thousands of members worldwide who have already enrolled. There's no need to try learning the guitar on your own. Let me help you become the best guitar player that you can be.